people that look for great ideas to make money, aren't nearly as successful as those who say, okay, what do I really love to do? What am I excited about? What do I know something about? What's kind of interesting and compelling.
Before he became one of the quietest billionaires in America, Michael Dell was the face of a computer empire that once dominated the world. Before Wall Street labeled his company boring and outdated, Dell was the #1 PC brand on the planet. Before headlines questioned his leadership, he made a decision few founders ever dare to make. He bought his own company back and disappeared from the public market. This isn't just a dropout success story. It's the story of a billionaire who walked away from the spotlight because staying in it was slowly destroying everything he built. As always, welcome back to Fame Origins, the place where we uncover the untold beginnings behind the world's most influential figures. Today's episode isn't about how Michael Dell made his billions, but why he chose to step away when the world was watching. This video exists because something about his silence never added up. If you're drawn to untold stories and the hidden psychology of power, subscribe and tell us which figure you want exposed next. Michael Saul Dell was born on February 23, 1965 in Houston, Texas, into a household that valued stability, education, and professional success. His father was an orthodontist. His mother worked as a stockbroker. From the outside, it was the kind of middle-class American upbringing designed to produce doctors, lawyers, or executives who followed the rules and stayed inside them. But Michael Dell was different in ways that didn't look rebellious at first. He wasn't loud, he wasn't charismatic, he didn't dream of fame. What stood out was something quieter and more unsettling, an obsession with systems. How things worked, how money moved, how inefficiency could be stripped away. As a child, Dell didn't just use products, he dismantled them. Radios, gadgets, anything with moving parts became puzzles to solve. In his teenage years, that curiosity shifted toward something more dangerous: business. While other kids focused on grades or social life, Dell was running small operations from his bedroom, selling newspaper subscriptions and carefully tracking which neighborhoods produced the highest returns. He wasn't chasing excitement, he was chasing patterns. School never fully held his attention, not because he lacked intelligence, but because the structure felt slow, outdated, and inefficient. Teachers saw a capable student. His parents saw a future professional, but Dell already saw something else, a world where middlemen could be removed and systems could be redesigned from the ground up. By the time he reached college, enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin, his priorities were already misaligned with the path laid out for him. Classes felt theoretical, dorm rooms felt temporary. What mattered to him wasn't the degree, it was the process of building something real, something measurable, something that worked better than what already existed. Long before fame, long before billions, Michael Dell wasn't dreaming of changing the world. He was quietly preparing to outgrow it. College was supposed to be the place where Michael Dell learned how the world worked. Instead, it confirmed what he already suspected: that the world, at least as it was being taught to him, was inefficient. At the University of Texas at Austin, Dell attended classes during the day and worked quietly at night. From his dorm room, he began upgrading personal computers and selling them directly to customers. Not through stores, not through distributors, just one-to-one. Order, build, deliver. Simple, clean, profitable. What started as a side project quickly became something harder to ignore. Orders increased, revenue followed. Dell wasn't experimenting anymore, he was operating. He tracked margins obsessively, studied customer feedback, and refined the process with almost clinical focus. While other students worried about exams, Dell worried about supply chains. The real tension during these years wasn't external, it was internal. His parents believed in education as security. A degree meant safety. Dropping out meant risk. And Michael Dell wasn't reckless by nature. He understood the consequences. That's what made his next decision so revealing. He didn't leave college because he was failing. He left because the numbers no longer justified staying. By the time he made the call, his business was generating more income than most graduates would see years after finishing school. Staying in class felt like delaying reality. So at 19 years old, Dell stepped away from the expected path, not dramatically, not defiantly, but decisively. There was no applause, no headlines, no mythology yet, just a young man choosing execution over credentials. What makes this period important isn't the dropout itself, it's the mindset behind it. Michael Dell wasn't chasing disruption or glory, he was following a principle that would define his entire career: control the system, remove friction, and let efficiency do the work. That philosophy would soon collide with the real world, and when it did, the rise would be fast, almost too fast to stop. Once Michael Dell committed fully to his company, everything accelerated. What began in a dorm room quickly evolved into a rapidly scaling operation, driven by a simple but radical idea: sell computers directly to customers and build them only after an order was placed. At a time when most PC manufacturers relied on retail stores and bloated inventories, Dell eliminated the middleman and the cost that came with it. The timing couldn't have been better. The personal computer was becoming a household necessity, and businesses were racing to modernize. Dell's made-to-order model allowed the company to offer lower prices, faster upgrades, and tighter control over margins. Customers noticed, orders multiplied, revenue surged. By the early 1990s, Dell Computer Corporation was growing at a pace that stunned competitors and analysts alike. Michael Dell, still in his 20s, found himself leading a company that was redefining how technology was sold. Venture capital followed, public attention followed. In 1988, Dell went public, officially stepping onto Wall Street's stage. For a while, the market loved him. Dell became a case study in business schools. The company rose to the top of the global PC market, eventually overtaking giants like IBM and Compaq. Michael Dell was hailed as a disciplined, data-driven founder, the rare dropout who built not just a product, but a machine. Unlike other tech leaders of the era, he avoided celebrity. No dramatic keynotes, no cult of personality. The focus was always the system. But growth at that scale came with pressure. As a public company, Dell was now accountable not just to customers, but to investors who demanded predictability. Quarter after quarter, the numbers had to go up. Efficiency, once a strength, became an expectation. Any slowdown triggered scrutiny. Internally, the company expanded rapidly. Externally, competition intensified. New players entered the market. Consumer tastes began shifting toward design and lifestyle branding, areas where Dell's utilitarian approach struggled to resonate. While the company continued to dominate in volume, cracks began forming beneath the surface. Still, during this period, Michael Dell appeared unstoppable. His fortune grew, his influence expanded. Dell became synonymous with the personal computer itself. To the outside world, this was the peak of a perfect rise story. But success had quietly changed the rules. The same system that propelled Dell to the top had locked him into a cycle of constant performance. And as the technology landscape evolved, the cost of maintaining that momentum would become increasingly difficult to hide. The empire was massive. The margin for error was disappearing. Dell's problems didn't arrive as a single scandal. There was no headline-grabbing collapse, no dramatic lawsuit that defined the moment. Instead, the damage came slowly, through perception, pressure, and a growing sense that the company had lost its edge. As the 2000s progressed, critics began questioning Dell's strategic direction. The PC market was changing, but Dell appeared stuck in the past. Competitors embraced design, mobility, and consumer experience. Dell stayed focused on efficiency and scale. What once made the company dominant now made it look rigid. Customer satisfaction scores slipped. Product quality issues surfaced. Analysts started calling Dell a commodity company, a label that quietly undermined its reputation. On Wall Street, patience thinned. Every quarter was judged against expectations built during the company's peak years. Any deviation, no matter how small, was treated as failure. The pressure on Michael Dell intensified. As founder and CEO of a public company, his decisions were no longer evaluated on long-term vision, but on short-term stock performance. Innovation slowed. Risk became dangerous. Every strategic move was filtered through investor reaction. Internally, leadership changes created instability. Externally, media narratives shifted from admiration to doubt. Michael Dell, once praised for discipline, was now portrayed as cautious, even outdated. The same silence that once defined his leadership style began to feel like absence. What made this period especially damaging was its ambiguity. There was no clear enemy to fight, no single mistake to correct. Just a growing realization that the system Dell had built so carefully was no longer built for change. And as the noise around the company grew louder, one question became impossible to ignore. What happens when a founder no longer controls the future of his own creation? By the early 2010s, Dell was still a giant, but it no longer moved like one. Revenue remained massive, yet the company felt trapped inside its own success. Every strategic shift was debated in public. Every investment was judged by its immediate impact on the stock price. For Michael Dell, this was the peak that didn't feel like victory. Behind closed doors, a different calculation was forming. The future Dell needed, enterprise infrastructure, long-term acquisitions, slow and expensive transformation, was incompatible with Wall Street's quarterly demands. Public markets wanted reassurance. Transformation required risk, patience, and silence. In 2013, Michael Dell made the most controversial decision of his career. He took the company private. To outsiders, it looked like retreat. Media framed it as an admission of failure, a billionaire buying time after losing momentum. Activist investors pushed back. Analysts questioned the price, the timing, the logic. But the decision wasn't about confidence, it was about control. By removing Dell from the public market, Michael Dell reclaimed something he had lost years earlier, the freedom to be wrong in private. No earnings calls, no daily stock judgment, no obligation to perform for an audience that no longer believed in the vision. This was success redefined, not as dominance, but as autonomy. And once the noise faded, the real work began. Away from the public market, Dell began to change in ways few people noticed. Without quarterly pressure, the company shifted its focus from consumer hype to long-term infrastructure. Massive acquisitions followed. Enterprise systems, cloud services, and data solutions replaced the race for flashy headlines. The transformation was slow and deliberately invisible. Dell no longer needed to impress Wall Street. It needed to survive the next decade. Under Michael Dell's leadership, the company became quieter, heavier, and far more durable. Not exciting, not trendy, but essential. Today, Michael Dell's legacy isn't defined by his dropout story or his early dominance in PCs. It's defined by something rarer, the willingness to step away from applause to protect what he built. As for the future, Dell remains where he seems most comfortable, out of sight, in control, and preparing for a world that moves slower than headlines suggest. Michael Dell's story isn't just about building a billion-dollar company. It's about knowing when visibility becomes a liability. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the origins behind one of the world's most influential figures, be sure to subscribe to Fame Origins for more stories that reveal what lies beneath the spotlight. Let us know in the comments who you want to see next, and we'll uncover the journey behind their rise.